Mistover isn't actually that new of a game. It came out about half a year ago with no real fanfare behind it. The only reason I even knew it existed was because I troll the Switch eShop constantly. My original interest in Mistover is mostly due to its art style. I'm a big fan of Yuji Himukai, and any work that shares his style for dramatic shading and line work is okay in my book. Even from just the storefront screenshots, it seemed like a lot of this game's design and aesthetic choices were pulling from Etrian Odyssey, which is probably one of my favorite portable RPGs, so I dropped my $20 on it and buckled in. This review is going to be covering the Faust update, which is the current build on the Switch eShop as well as the build packed into many hard copies you find. Some of the footage might be a little older, but I won't be showcasing anything that's not accurate to the current build. Mistover is developed by Krafton and published by Arc System Works. It's a classic dungeon crawler in almost every sense of the word. Maze-like dungeons? Check. Multiple resources to manage or you die? Check. Insanely hard bosses that feel more like puzzles than number games? Check. Permadeath because of said bosses? Double, triple, and absolutely check. There's also something called the Doomsday Clock that acts like a grading system. If you complete objectives, clear out enemies, and explore a dungeon to its fullest, you'll wind the clock back or keep it in place. But if you dip out of a dungeon too early, teammates die, or you avoid combat, the clock will slowly tick forwards. When it goes all the way forwards, it's a game over no matter what. It's actually pretty hard to wind the thing back after you've cleared dungeons out, since it will treat cleared dungeons as less rewarding. Thankfully, the game does keep track of your exploration percentage on the dungeon navigation HUD, so it's not like you're walking around blind. Mistover also gives the interesting option to tweak the difficulty settings around. It's possible to remove the Doomsday Clock entirely if you want, if you find the game too punishing. You can alter many other aspects too, from damage ratios and even mess with a status called Limbo. Your characters aren't dead when their HP hits 0, instead they get put into a Limbo status. Should they take damage again while in Limbo, they'll be permanently killed off. There's no real punishment to change these settings other than maybe to your ego. It's actually possible to run Mistover more like a old Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy game if that's more your shtick. The only thing you can't seem to turn off though is the permadeath. Combat normally takes place on a 9x9 grid. When you encounter a monster, your team is spread out according to predetermined formations. Who and what you can attack is entirely dependent on grid positions. The system is implemented really well, and movement-based skills are often important cruxes for strategy. Character locations can affect things like their combo skills, you can force enemies into specific attack patterns by shoving them back, and a couple of classes even benefit from being able to move freely between the different front, middle, and back lines to deal damage. Team building is also very dependent on how well you make use of the grid. There's one unit that is meant to be a frontline wall, but you have to manage the middle space between just about everyone else. The way a character operates can change completely based on where you place them. For example, the cleric can heal and do basic support from the backline, but they can't really attack or use some of their stronger healing magic unless they're in the front. Likewise, the Ronin has access to some of the better skills in the middle, but oftentimes his ability to hit the very back or front line can be compromised just to do so. Mistover's party members are very well designed, and realistically, you should probably consider shifting your squad around depending on what area you're in. A good example is the Grim Reaper and Onmyoji classes. Neither are particularly strong compared to the other class options early on, but their ability to remove and give buffs can be vital in later areas where those same buffs and debuffs can be the difference between winning or a full party wipe. Stubborn players with character attachment will probably run into a wall sooner rather than later while exploring the mist-ridden wastelands around them. The game isn't without its issues though. Aside from its difficulty and gameplay being a little niche, I've run into plenty of performance issues on the Switch. Frames will stutter, effects will cause graphical glitches, and there's even a few audio issues, but this only becomes noticeable in the later areas when there's many things on screen. It doesn't ruin my personal enjoyment of the game, but I can understand why it would really be off-putting to someone else. It might be better to look into the PC release of the game then, but nothing in here should be difficult enough for the Switch to pull off in the first place. There's also a lack of a dedicated save feature. You can have multiple save files, but you can't willingly save the file yourself. Instead, the game is constantly auto-saving after every move. Maybe that's why it chugs so much. This makes the game's already punishing bosses even harder since you can't just go back to an earlier save to undo your losses. So, whenever you get a huge party wipe, you're probably better off just instantly resetting. That said, excursions into the dungeons tend to be relatively short. Even the bigger areas from later on only take about 30 or 45 minutes per try. The game's pace is kept in check by its story. You're handed each part of the narrative in chunks via missions from your town's main office. There aren't really that many side quests, and typically you can't move forward until you've completed all of the tasks that the area region has assigned to you. While a full run of the game might only take about 25 hours on normal difficulty, it's compounded by the fact that you'll probably have to start over a few times to recoup from having your party wiped out. Mistover is a game that I think is carried by its aesthetics. Dungeon crawlers are already a pretty niche genre, and I think Mistover does a good job of making itself feel unique. The combat and team building aspects are really fun to mess with, even though it's where the game starts to hiccup in performance. If you're looking for a short but challenging RPG, Mistover might be worth a purchase. Otherwise, maybe just chill and wait for a sale.